Oh, hi. Well, I skipped last week, but I'm back on it today. Been a busy segment of life. All kinds of things happen. So let's take a look at chapter 40 of Genesis today and see what happens. Let's get the story before us here. Genesis chapter 40. Sometime later, the cupbearer of Egypt offended the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with the two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why are your faces so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there's no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is what it means," Joseph said. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Okay, well, if I were to give another title to this, it might be, Why do bad things happen to good people? And we've all asked those questions. Why is this happening to me? Why did it happen to a friend of mine or relative? And we have questions about why. We always question the bad. We don't ever question the good. It's just the bad. But anyway, here we are. Joseph is in prison, and 2 others are there also, and there's a repetition that goes on here. I've said as we've been through Genesis that the Bible is not just history, it's revelation. So we want to stop and ask ourselves, what is it that is being revealed to us in this chapter? It's a section of Genesis, but it is the whole chapter. So the facts are that Joseph was thrown into jail on false charges, and he proves faithful while he's there, and so the jailer begins to trust him and finds him very useful in his administration of the jail. And so Joseph has risen to position again, like he did in Potiphar's house. But this time it seems that it is to no advantage, at least in the immediate story. There are two others that are also jailed. They're called the baker, chief baker, and the chief cupbearer of the king, of Pharaoh. Now, the why isn't important to the story. So it doesn't tell us what they did or why they were in jail. It only says that. So it's the that we want to look at. We're also told that they each had dreams. So dreams focus divine activity. God often communicates through dreams. Sometimes he gives us wisdom through dreams. And so in the Bible, we find God communicating with people. He communicates with Abraham. He communicates with Abimelech in dreams. He communicates with Jacob in dreams. And he had communicated with Joseph. He had given him dreams very specifically. And Joseph, I'm sure, was resting on those being fulfilled sometime in his lifetime, but it hadn't happened yet. So God is a communicator. And the problem is that not everyone has discernment, the spiritual discernment that Joseph talks about here, about the dreams. So Joseph isn't just smart or skilled. We want to hear and see very clearly. The writer, I believe it's Moses, is trying to tell us that he's gifted. But the gift isn't a package of wisdom or savvy or something. The gift is the Holy Spirit. And so in the next chapter, verse 38, Pharaoh himself is going to identify that gift and say that Joseph is one in whom is the Spirit of God. And I have mentioned now that Joseph is the only one in Genesis who is said to be full of the Spirit. Now, the Holy Spirit will come on others. It came on Saul and other prophets and so on later in the Old Testament. But in this case, Joseph is said to be full of the Holy Spirit. He's the only one in Genesis who is filled with the Spirit of God, aside from Adam. Of course, Adam was from the get-go, but he lost the Holy Spirit when he sinned, apparently, and so we are born in Adam's image, devoid of the Spirit of God. Now, Joseph is getting a reputation of being an interpreter of dreams. So his comment to the baker and cupbearer is simply that interpretations belong to God. Now, he doesn't claim to be an interpreter of dreams, and yet here he is getting that reputation. So this now sets Joseph apart from all those who before him experienced dreams. They had dreams that they had to figure out for themselves, but here Joseph is going to figure out, interpret dreams of others. So it is said of him in verse 13 that he is discerning and wise, and it'll be repeated in verse 39 in the next chapter. And the interesting thing is that things turn out exactly the way Joseph predicts them, or Joseph discerns them. Abraham was shown the course of events through a vision, and Jacob was communicated to through dreams and so on. But Joseph discerns the course of the future in the divinely given dreams to other people here. And that this is now a new twist in the revelation that we're hearing in Genesis. The Pentateuch, that's the first 5 books of the Bible, is addressed to the generations that will come after Moses. So it simply tells us a detail about what happened before, but it is predicting what's going to happen after Moses. And so Moses is leaving a record for those that are going to come after him. He is said to be the great prophet, according to Deuteronomy 34:10. Many of the prophets had not yet been the prophecies had not yet been fulfilled. So much of what God was promising down through generation is way off in the future. Now, there will be one who is called Joshua, who steps up to lead the people after Moses. And he is not presented as a prophet, but he is said to be one who is filled with the spirit of wisdom. Now, in Proverbs, It sounds like the spirit of wisdom is the Holy Spirit, but it doesn't say that. So Moses is writing both Genesis and Deuteronomy. So if he wanted to say that he's filled with the Spirit of God, he would have said that. But he doesn't. He makes this distinction between Joseph and what he says of Joshua. So Joshua gets to be known in his day as a wise man. Well, Joseph was also wise, but Joseph was wise because he was filled with the Holy Spirit. Now, there's a shift here in the kind of leader that comes up in Israel. So up to this point, men had been guided by God, and sometimes they had to be corrected by Gentiles. But now we have someone who is guided by an internal presence of the Spirit of God. And this is a new kind of leader. Joseph is the first of these new kinds of leaders. And Israel is going to need to recognize, and all the way down to the book of Acts, when the disciples talk about selecting 12 men full of the Holy Spirit and of wisdom. So we're going to need these kind of people. And Judaism starts trying to figure it out and discern it. And then later in the book of Acts, the church figures it out. So like David and Solomon and Daniel, who come later, Joseph is a prototype of the wise men whom God is going to equip to lead Israel. This prototype in Joseph of the future leaders is one who has to stand the test. And the test then that leaders are to be measured by is their wisdom and the presence of the Holy Spirit. The elements we're shown here is that Joseph has, and will be seen as we go through the story in Israel as one of Israel's greatest leaders. And what we're really doing is we're getting ready to be able to discern the Messiah when he comes on the scene, and that won't happen until in the New Testament. So here we are in a transition, a shift, if you please, from one kind of leader of Israel to another kind. And it's no longer going to just be posterity, the sons of Abraham or of Jacob or of Isaac or whoever of the patriarchs. Now we're going to look for leaders who are filled with the Spirit. There's also going to be a little contest that goes for the next several chapters between the house of Joseph and the house of Judah. And we're going to wonder kind of which line. Now, of course, you've read the story, so you cheat. But from whom will the Messiah come? And so that's going to be settled, and we're going to hear the why in that. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and we'll pick it up again, God willing, next week. In the meantime, be blessed. God bless you.